Welcome, everyone. Put in the chat box where you're from. All right, Leslie, are you going to get us going?
Hi, you're good to go, Leah.
All right, awesome. Welcome, everyone. My name is Leia LeMaster Horton with Horton Test Prep, and I am so glad that you're here tonight. The topic of the webinar is secrets to winning scholarships, and we're going to be covering a lot of material. So in the meantime, I'd love for you to put a chat in the box, chat box, just where you're from. And as the webinar goes on, you are welcome to ask any of your college prep questions. And at the end, I will try to come back around and answer those. But I just wanted to start and say welcome. So glad that you're here. And I am live from Lookout Mountain, Georgia. And just to tell you a little bit about the college prep process is that when you are trying to win scholarships, I just want you to be yourself and know that whether it's college admission teams or scholarship committees, they really just want to know about you. So sit back and just take some notes on some things that might help you in that process. So again, my name is Leia LeMaster Horton, and I have been a test prep professional for 8 years, educator for over 20. And what got me interested in the college prep process was because when I started the education and my oldest was going into kindergarten, I blinked and then they were all grown up and had graduated from college, graduated from high school, we're going into college. So I learned a lot about the college prep process and about how to earn scholarships. And I realized that there's a lot to it. And I wanted to share some of that helped me assist my own 3 children in winning full tuition scholarships, and now as well many other students. And test prep is just a part of the journey. There's a lot more to it than that. So again, when it comes to winning scholarships, students need to learn a little bit about themselves and be authentic in the journey of explaining who they are. Whether it's writing essays or whether it is applying for scholarships, students just need to be themselves. And when they write essays and things, they need to be writing about themselves. So another secret is super strong letters of recommendation. So I actually typically recommend you asking for 5 letters of recommendation, knowing that you are only going to be using 2. So again, I recommend 5 because the people you think that are going to write stellar letters of recommendation for you or your child don't. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Either they put it off to the last minute, or they're very busy, or they're not necessarily a good writer. So just keep that in mind through the process, that it would behoove you to start early and to look into asking people now and give them maybe 3 weeks and say, and also I don't recommend blind letters of recommendation either. So blind letters of recommendation simply mean that the student, the family would never be able to read the letter. So the recommender is always the one who actually sends the recommendation on to the scholarship or to the college. However, a blind letter means that the student would never get a chance to read it. And since I recommend going after a lot of merit-based scholarships, I would never want to send a letter of recommendation off to an important scholarship like the President Coolidge Scholarship we'll be getting to later tonight, when you haven't read it and you don't know what's being said about your child. So I recommend stellar letters of recommendation, and you'll be able to read the 5 and know, oh, this one's average, oh, this one's stellar, right? So kind of keep that in mind. That's really strong letters of recommendation come in handy when winning scholarships. Passion projects is one of the first things we're going to talk about tonight as far as winning scholarships. And I'll be explaining what a passion project is because a lot of students aren't really sure what that is. And it really is a service project for your community, usually, that helps the student learn about themselves. So it's not just a line item to check off the list. Oh yeah, I did a passion project. No, it's actually very important and very beneficial for the students to learn about themselves through the process of going, hey, I think I might be interested in doing this for my life. How can I turn around and bless my community with it? So let's come up with some examples. Say the student is an athlete and they are very interested in sports, and they've played varsity soccer throughout high school, and they want to go off to college and be an athlete. I would recommend then hosting a inner city soccer camp for your community. And the process of going through that passion project is very beneficial because the student learns a lot about themselves. So here's just a couple examples of passion projects, whether it's Eagle Scout projects, soccer camps, theater camps, robotics showcases, if they're into STEM and engineering, research opportunities. That is becoming more and more popular for high school students to do research opportunities on the collegiate level while they're in high school. Hosting a future leaders event, math competitions, science fairs. At the end of the day, a passion project is an idea that the student has, and they go through the entire process of having that idea come to fruition, whether it's the raising of the funds or volunteers to get it done. So passion projects are really important. Again, they serve the community, and they serve the community in the students' interest area, in their passion zone. And it also is very beneficial because it gives students something to write about on their college entrance essays, as well as gives them something to talk about in their scholarship interviews. So for instance, if they end up getting invited to scholarship weekend, which a lot of schools have these days, especially private schools, they'll be interviewed, and it'll give the student something to talk about that they have done. So part of their high school narrative, their story. So one of the reasons I think that passion projects are so beneficial is because it really helps the student develop their own professional capital. So professional capital is a term used to describe 3 things, and is referred to as capital because it does have an intrinsic value. It is valuable, but professional capital is made up of 3 things. It's made up of human capital, social capital, and decisional capital. So the human capital is actually any area of self-development. So whether it's the student taking care of themselves with self-care, eating better, exercising, learning new things, learning a foreign language, anything that is helping the individual grow And a lot of times we think of classes, right? Foreign languages or classes, but any of those areas, whether it's books that they read, they are increasing their human capital. So I believe that passion projects help a student learn more about themselves, what they're interested in, and as a result, it increases their human capital. So the next is called social capital, and social capital is really all of the people that are going to be involved in that process with you of from idea to fruition for that passion project to actually take place. It's the volunteers that you need to assist you in the process. And so what I normally tell students is that, money chases great ideas. So if you have a great idea, getting it funded is not going to be a problem. I recommend going out into your community, explaining what you're doing and asking local businesses to consider sponsoring you, and check with people that you are patrons with, maybe your car or insurance company and things like that. So the social capital is really that working with others, that teamwork, part of the process of learning how to even communicate with others to get the job done. Decisional capital is one of the hardest ones, and that is actually making decisions. And I think all of us here realize that sometimes making decisions are tough. You're going to make good ones, you're going to make bad ones. But at the end of the day, learning how to be a decision maker really comes into play is when you have the authority to make the decision, make it. Don't defer. So you will grow in your decisional capital. The student will grow in their decisional capital as they go through that process of deciding what passion project do they want to do. And it will help them grow and know how to make decisions, because they'll make bad ones and have to learn from those. And then as time goes on, they'll actually be a better decision maker. So, and this catchphrase at the bottom, I say that all the time. I ran a speech and debate club for 12 years. And I say it with all my test prep students, that with experience comes confidence. And that is so true. And with making decisions, you just need to know in advance, some are going to be good, some are going to be bad. But through that process, there's just a lot of decisions to be made. So a lot of growth opportunities there. So, and at the end of the day, one of the main reasons as an educator, I am such a huge fan of passion projects is the fact that students through the process learn the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So a fixed mindset is, oh, I'd never be able to do that. I'd never be able to host a camp or do something like that. Or I'd never be able to learn that. Or I could never be that. I could never be a brain surgeon, right? That all is a lie. It's a limiting belief. It's a fixed mindset, and it's a box that a lot of students, as well as adults, put themselves into. But the growth mindset is actually the truth. The growth mindset means I can learn that. I can do that. So whatever it is you need to learn to do, just knowing that you can learn it. So the truth of the growth mindset actually just really sets students free in opening up life opportunities and career opportunities, to know that whatever it is, they could learn it. And really it comes down to not having those skills now, right? We can't perform brain surgery now, right? So sometimes it's hard to imagine what life would be like if we had those skills. But knowing that you can learn hard things, that you can learn it, is just part of the process. It really does open up just a world of opportunities for students. So that's my hot button, is just knowing the truth of the growth mindset, that you can learn anything. So, and for some students, no matter what it is you need to learn, you might need more time or better curriculum or better study skills and better tutors or a kind teacher that encourages questions of clarification. But at the end of the day, whatever it is that you want to learn is possible. So, and just a quick note about a growth mindset. I'm actually in grad school getting my master's of education. And one of my classes, it was constitutional law. And before class started, I had to write 101 legal briefs, which I started like hyperventilating, going, I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know how to like write a legal brief. But just for you to know what one is, it was reading the entire court case and doing a synopsis of what happened and why the Supreme Court made their decision, what constitutional amendment did they uphold. So I wrote one, sent it to my professor, and he wrote back and said, you're good to go. And I write 100 more. So I have to tell myself the truth of the growth mindset as well. So coming back around to the pieces of the puzzle to win scholarships. One more thing is student resumes. So we're actually covering a lot of content tonight. I just talked about the benefit of passion projects and how it helps the student learn about themselves and then bless their community. Student resumes are a way for a student to document their high school narrative. And it tells what they were involved in, their extracurriculars, their awards, their work experience. Most scholarships that merit-based scholarships that students will be applying for, they will need a student resume. So some of the ones I'm going to be talking about later definitely require a student resume. So I recommend going ahead and writing one, even if you think, oh, I'm not going to actually end up using it. It comes in handy, whether it's just getting a job at Publix, right? As well as these merit-based scholarships or for honors programs. And as I mentioned, helping my own 3 children through that process, I found out later that even though the college hadn't asked for the student resume, it was in my son's file, as well as pictures of his Eagle Scout project, and his entire file was looked at by the scholarship committee. So you never know, you might need one. But and I did mention here the President Cooler Scholarship, but I have a slide on that. That's actually my favorite scholarship. And I know a lot about scholarships, kind of referred to as the scholarship lady in Orlando, Florida, because I know a lot about scholarships and I love helping students find the right scholarships for them. So this is a sample of a student resume. It's not really even a real one. It was just a sample one, but it was one that I didn't think was very good. And it didn't have very much content in it. But the main thing I didn't like was the fact that the email address had body bag Bill, right? I actually had a student who had an email address that was body bag and then his name. So be careful about those funny email addresses. And I recommend having a student resume. It's got a lot of content in it. So again, this is also, all of these are just samples. But this one is a little bit better, but look at the hobbies. It's mentions that writing and softball, but then not much more to it. So we want to learn more about this student, Rachel, right? We want to have more depth to it. So I would recommend having your student resumes be much more meaty on why they're passionate about things. So this one is another sample that I did end up liking. I liked how it had the assets at the top: confident, adventurous, committed, and devoted to excellence. And then their activities, their leadership activities, things they were involved in. And the skills were like computer programming. So I do want to mention that there's some free templates on Canva that really help student resumes look professional. I'm going to show you a few. They're completely free. And all you need to do is create an account, a free account on Canva with an email address. And then you can actually put your high school data into the template. It looks very professional. So here is a sample of one of the templates. And you can, rename those titles. Those are some that I just threw in there. And I don't really recommend having like your test scores unless they're printed on your student resume, and then unless they're maybe in the top 1% of the nation. Otherwise, I wouldn't really recommend that. This is a sample student resume. I like the saying at the top where it says a highly responsible high school student with exceptional focus, determination, organizational skills, and a proven record of results, and all of her activities. I I do recommend looking into seeing if a photo is allowed. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, on the merit-based scholarships that you're going to be going for, and find out the rules. So, but I do recommend, if it is allowed, I recommend using it. So the next, and we're not going into the nitty-gritty and what's written there. I'm just wanting you to see some sample templates. But this next one actually, and by the way, those were pictures of my children that I just threw in a sample template, but I loved the wording of the profile on this one. My value system is built upon a strong foundation of faith, integrity, excellence, and contribution. With a focused mind, love of learning and serving, I seek to impact the lives of others with compassion and solutions. So that one's kind of stood out to me from the others. Just making me think, oh, wow, I really want to know, more about this student. So, and it was just a very crisp and clear student resume. So coming back around to some of the other things that help make the help winning scholarships is, yes, it is true, especially when we're talking about merit-based scholarships, that having those high ACT or SAT scores really do help. A lot of times it's just that what is required to help students make it to scholarship weekend, right? And then it's a clean slate, and everybody who shows up is a scholar. And then it's going to be more, communication skills and your interview skills as well. But those test scores certainly do come in handy for winning those merit-based scholarships, and we went after a bunch of them. So I'm sure some of you are thinking, do we still need test scores? And it really does just depend on your personal goals and the college that you're going to be considering, whether it's going to be beneficial for you. I do know that there is a trend now with it sort of coming back. It started with MIT when they announced they were going to be incorporating those test scores back in, and then Auburn followed suit, and UTC Chattanooga, UTC Knoxville, right? And so it is coming back around to the state schools as well as to some of the private schools. And what I wanted to show an example of is a private school here on Lookout Mountain that even though they're test optional for admittance, they actually require test scores to be invited to the scholarship weekend. So if you're going to go to a private school, you definitely need those, top financial aid packages, or to be able to be in the running for the full tuition scholarships that they give away every year. So for example, the college I'm talking about is Covenant College. They're on Lookout Mountain, Georgia. They're a small private Christian school. And this year they are test optional for admittance, but did require that SAT of 1320 or ACT of 28 or CLT, which is, if you haven't heard of it, it's a new college entrance exam. It's been around since 2015, I believe. And it's the classic learning test. And it really just has some great literature. So great quality literature in that college entrance exam. But just as an example, optional for admittance, but it did require scores to be invited to scholarship weekend. If you were invited to scholarship weekend, then you could apply for the full tuition scholarships that they give away every year. And I also just wanted you to know that that is an example of a lot of other private schools that do give away full tuition scholarships if you make it to scholarship weekend. So here's an example of how the test scores actually help financially for the top financial aid packages. So for example, great grades and high test scores would put a student in the running for a higher financial aid package they refer to as a trustee. That $20,000 is actually $20,000 scholarship per year. So over a 4-year period, that's an $80,000 scholarship. And then also it kind of trickles down. So just as an example that when it comes to the test scores are helpful in getting those top financial aid packages. So as far as some of the best places to find scholarships, I do have a list of some scholarship search engines I'm going to show you in just a minute. But I want to be honest with you that with my 3 children, they were all members of NSHSS, and they applied for a ton of scholarships, and they two of my three ended up winning scholarships, and the money went directly to their college of choice. So one of them won $1,000 and the other one won $2,500. So what I recommend, if you are a member of NSHSS, I recommend just apply for a scholarship. And the goal doesn't even have to be to win it. That may be your goal, but that wouldn't be my goal. My goal is for you to learn the process of how to apply for scholarships, because so many people join and then they never apply for the scholarships because they don't know how. And it's pretty simple. So I want you to go through the process of just applying for a scholarship, because then you'll be like, oh, I need letters of recommendation. And then you'll go get them, right? Oh, I need a student resume. And then you'll go write it. So I definitely recommend applying for NSHSS. I also have one of my, I taught Latin and debate for years. One of my debate students, I just wrote a letter of recommendation for him and for an NSHSS scholarship, and he just won $2,500. So there's actually some wonderful scholarships out there. So I highly recommend going for those. I wanted to mention a couple of things about the when is the best time, right, to start your test prep journey. I recommend sometime spring semester of 10th grade, because that's a sweet spot between that spring of 10th grade through fall of junior year, so that students are able to reach their highest score by October of their junior year, so that they are not only able to score the highest on the PSAT exam, which counts their junior year towards the National Merit Scholarship. And there's 3 different levels of being a National Merit Scholar. It's National Merit Finalist, National Merit Semi-Finalist, and National Merit Commended. Some colleges offer scholarships for all 3 levels, but the National Merit Finalist is very prestigious. And so it's only the top 1% in the nation that make those top scores and become a National Merit Finalist. And again, there's usually a $2,500 scholarship directly from the College Board for that one, as well as just other colleges will sometimes additionally give scholarships if you are a National Merit Scholar. So kind of keep that in mind. But to be ready for the to take the test by fall of your junior year, you need to give yourself several months of the test prep journey. It's usually, I would say, maybe 3 to 6 months, depending on the student, of going through the process. But not only is it beneficial for students to reach their highest score, both PSAT and SAT, by fall of junior year for the PSAT exam, it's also for the President Coolidge Scholarship, which is, in my opinion, the best in America, because students apply their junior year, so January of their junior year. And the thing about the President Coolidge Scholarship is that it is a full tuition scholarship for all 4 years, and it includes room and board to any college that the student chooses. So that's just amazing. I know a lot about scholarships, but including room and board, that's a hard cost, right? And so I never see that. A lot of full tuition scholarships, I do see, they're hard to win, but I do see them, but never including room and board. And to any college the student chooses, I mean, they could choose Princeton, right? It's $85,000 per year. But if they win the President Coolidge, that would be paid for all 4 years. So it's a really amazing scholarship. And I recommend every junior apply for it, whether they think they're going to win or not, because of the process. The process of applying for the President Coolidge is so valuable. And yes, there are only a couple of winners that win it, 2 to 3 students per year, but they also have something called the Coolidge Senators. And there's, I believe, 100 recipients of that. They win a trip to DC and lots of accolades for that as well. But it's a wonderful program. And the reason I recommend it, a couple. First, I want students to go on coolidgescholars.org and read the bios of past winners. When students read the bios of past winners, they're either going to be encouraged or intimidated. But in my mind, it's a win-win. They're either going to know, oh, wow, there's some really, high school students that have accomplished a lot, right? It's going to encourage them to accomplish, or it's going to encourage them to step up their game and maybe go start something, maybe come up with an idea that's going to be beneficial in their school or in their community. and it's going to give them ideas. So I recommend applying. And again, it's the application is January of their junior year. And that process of getting those letters of recommendation, your student resume, answering those essays and going through that process really helps students try to get their best scores ever by that fall of junior year. But even if they don't get their highest scores by then, they still have that spring semester, right, of junior year to get those really great scores, so that when they're applying to colleges, which they normally apply August or September of senior year of high school, you have it already. You're set to go. So this scholarship really helps students be ready for all the other things that are going to come, as well as be ready to start applying for those scholarships. Because a lot of families think that the scholarships are only for seniors, and that's not true. There's a lot of great scholarships on NSHSS for juniors as well. And other search engines will show you that there's some great ones out there. So my other favorite scholarship is called Distinguished Young Women. It is for high school girls going into their senior year, but you do have to apply your junior year. This scholarship is amazing. Both of my daughters participated in it and loved it. Number one, it's just fun. So it's worth your time to do it because it's fun. But they also give away a ton of money. I believe my oldest daughter won over 21,000 through them, and my middle daughter won around 2,500 or 3,000. So it was worth their time. They enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend looking into it. It's a good idea to consider that one if you have daughters. So here's a couple of the scholarship search engines that I have looked into before. There's a few out there that it just felt like we were applying out into the world and we never heard back on anything. So I ended up really, some of these are quite nice. You don't need all of them. I would pick 2 to 3 and then go deep and wide with 2 to 3 search engines, so you don't feel overwhelmed in the process. I wanted to put in here a quote from the Washington Post: "Can coaching truly boost SAT scores? For years, the College Board said no. Now it says yes." Well, for the longest time, they weren't supportive of coaching because they thought, oh, students should just go in and take it cold. But as students that were trying to get into top, more elite schools were coaching for these exams, and they noticed their scores were significantly higher, they changed their tune after 60 years of saying no and ended up saying, coaching is a good idea. It really does help improve scores. So I'm going to talk about that just for a minute. Just that I do offer both ACT and SAT coaching options. And if you don't know which exam is best for you, because I normally recommend trying both, but I do recommend the SAT because of the fact that it offers 29% more time on the math. And through the years, I have noticed that most students need more help with the math than any other section. So as you can see on the chart, when it comes to the ACT math, the 60 seconds per question, and the SAT in its current state, and of course it's going digital spring of 2024, but for now in its paper copy, the math is made up of 2 sections, and the first section is 75 seconds per question, so 15 seconds longer. And then the fourth section, the calculator section, is actually 87 seconds per question. And you might be thinking, oh, that's just 27 seconds, but you're going to have to trust me that those 27 seconds accumulate and they really help students have more time. So if you are going, I don't care which one, I recommend the SAT. And as far as how to prepare for the exams, I recommend only using real ACT materials or real College Board materials. So College Board is the organization that writes the SAT and the PSAT exams. They put 10 free practice tests online. You can just Google SAT practice test 5 and it'll come up in a PDF format. And I coach students through all 10 practice tests. Is that a lot? Yes, it is. Does it work? Yes, it does. We coach either through the reading comprehension and the writing language sections or coaching through the math sections. I also coach through past real exams. I just recently coached through the May 2022, the March 2022. Can't wait to get my hands on the October 2022. So I coach again through past real exams because I believe, and the practice test 1 through 10, because I'm not a fan of copycat curriculum. And so copycat curriculum is what I refer to as the plethora of study guides and curriculum that you can purchase at Barnes & Noble or at conferences that a different company wrote. So I'm just not a fan of those. And I'm sure you know the name brands I'm thinking of, right? Just that when they write their practice tests, they're thinking, now how would College Board word this systems of equations problem, or difference of squares, or fractional exponents to root form, or completing the square? Like, they are trying to copy the practice test. And I just believe there's no reason, right? The best way to prepare for these exams is to use real ACT exams or real SAT exams. So as far as what the QAS service is, I want to mention that that service means that College Board releases the test questions 3 times a year. So they administer the test about 6 or 7 times a year. But if you take the exam in June, right, you're not allowed to buy the test questions. But if you take the exam in either March, May, or October, the student parent can purchase the test questions when you sign the student up for the exam. And what that means is when you get your test scores back, obviously, you will be able to go into the dashboard and actually click on the exact test question. And that is so valuable. It's very, very valuable because that way you'll be able to look at it and determine that's a skill the student doesn't know, right? They need more practice on that skill. So it's very valuable to have the test questions. I don't want you to be confused with another service they offer called the SAS. That's not the same thing. That's just going to, they say it tells you what the skill is, but it really doesn't. It's way too vague. And I believe that when they tell you it's easy, medium, or hard, that's not really helpful for you. So the QAS is extremely valuable. And what that means is when you're arbitrarily picking the month for your student to take the exam, I would recommend taking it in March, May, or October so that you can purchase the test questions. So I do have something that I just found out about today, so I'm super excited about it, is the fact that you are able to create an account on MathTops and you get a 20% off. This is a diagnostic. It's actually an online math tool that I use with my students. I absolutely love it. Every single SAT math skill or ACT math skill is in this online program, and it really works well. And I just had a student that took the October SAT exam, and through his time on MathTops and coming to the coaching sessions and taking those skills that now we knew he had, right? Which one way you could do that is to go back and read every math curriculum from kindergarten through 12th grade, which nobody's going to do because that's kind of ridiculous. But that's the concept of a review, because the exam is 40% arithmetic and the remaining 60% is, and this is pretty much both ACT and SAT, but for the SAT exam, the remaining 60% is mostly algebra. It's got a little bit of geometry and a little bit of trig, but a lot of linear equation problems. But this is an example just off to the right, how the student would be able to see what areas they need improvement on and put in a lot of questions. And so the student that spent a lot of time on MathTops put in over 1,000 questions, just making sure he was rock solid on the skills and fleshing through those practice tests 1 through 10. Just found out that he got a score of a 1510, 1510 and a 790 out of 800 on the math. So it really, really works. And I highly recommend MathTops. And again, the code is Horton if you want to get 20% off. So moving on. It's kind of stuck. Oh, there you go. All right, just as far as if you are interested in coaching, I do have two different options. I have group classes and private one-on-one coaching, all on Zoom, so I am nationwide. So I coach the ACT and the SAT, and I will be adding in the CLT this December.
What I love about Mrs. Horton's test prep is that she teaches us every skill, formula, and shortcut for each type of question so that we can complete it as fast as possible. She teaches it's not a logic test, it's a skill-based test. So with a lot of hard work and consistent test prep, I have managed to earn my Bright Future Scholarship. Thank you so much, Mrs. Horton.
Hi, my name is Emmy, and I'm Mrs. Horton's student. I went to one of Mrs. Horton's SAT workshops when I was just getting started with test prep, and I loved it. I used Mrs. Horton's approach to the SAT, scored in the top 1% in the nation, and I just found out that I earned a perfect PSAT score. Thank you so much, Mrs. Horton.
All right, thanks for letting me show you those shout out testimonials. If you are interested in a test prep consultation, you're more than welcome to send an email to info@hortontestprep.com, or you're welcome to scan this QR code to get some additional information. And so Leslie, I may need you to help me access some of those questions. Oh, I did want to mention this too, real quick, that that's actually my link tree. It's both on Instagram and on my website, just in case you want to make it easy for you to access some of those links that I mentioned. The top 2 SAT math skills is a free guide that I wrote. You're more than welcome to go download that. It has 2 of the most popular SAT math skills that College Board tests over and over again. It's usually about 7 or 8 problems that are composed of those 2 skills. And I demonstrated it in an easy math problem, a medium problem, and a hard problem. It's a direct link to the President Coolidge Scholarship and the Distinguished Young Women. The second one here, College Funding Education, that is actually a company that helps families lower their EFC, that's your estimated family contribution, a very, very important number. So I highly recommend watching that free video and learning all that you can about lowering your EFC. And that's what it looks like on my website and the link tree. So the 4 college funding secrets. So very, very important. Again, I have that free guide for you. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that I think I might need Leslie to access the questions for me.
Hey, Leah, you should see the Q&A bottom at the bottom. So just click on it and then you should be able to see all the questions. And there's about 39 questions in there.
Okay, I'm not seeing that. Okay, all right, got it. Great. Not sure how to. Yeah, it's not working. I can only see a couple. Okay, I can see a couple, and then Leslie, I'm gonna have you come back and help me with that. It says recommendations should be from a teacher or someone who knows my son. All right, usually it's a character reference and then also an academic reference. So that is what the President Coolidge Scholarship is going to be asking for, character reference and academic reference. A lot of times it's a youth pastor or a Boy Scout leader or a debate coach, right? As well as perhaps an academic teacher, like a science teacher that can write the letters for them. Does the passion have to be alone? I'm just recommending a passion project. It can actually be alone, but they're better when it's a bigger project, because then he or she is coordinating details with volunteers to make it come to fruition. There are some passion projects like the getting a chance to do research on the college level. That would just be the student working with the college professor. But most of the time they're bigger events, right? Like putting on some type of there was a youth that I heard about, like learning learning investments, right? An investment camp for youth, right? Was one idea that I heard of. And one student built a brush wall for a campsite that also had rock climbing on one side. So they can be big events, right? Big things that cost a lot of money, but that's where that fundraising comes in, and it really just helps it be more of a big event in the student's life that they do. The bigger the event, the more it's something that makes an impression on them, and hopefully it's something that they're interested in. Starting a school club, yes, starting a school club would definitely be one. Perhaps a robotics club, an engineering club, or anything that you are passionate about. Let's see. And a lot of scholarships are leadership based. So for example, most of the honors programs that I have seen that are at state schools and private universities are leadership honors programs. And so when they are interviewing the student, they are looking to interview the student past, present, future. And what that means is, does their student resume communicate past leadership experience? Not just that they want to be a leader in the future, right? Have they been a leader, right? Were they involved in their youth group, or were they involved in speech and debate and they were a servant leader and involved in teaching there, right? So did the student look for opportunities to lead? So that's most of them are. So I highly recommend leadership opportunities. So if you are a sophomore, junior, and you still have time left in your high school journey, you're still writing your story. So I would recommend looking for those leadership opportunities for sure. Would writing and publishing, yes. Would writing and publishing an album count as a passion project? Absolutely. And that's great and different. There's not really a, it's like the sky's the limit. You have a lot of freedom for the student to decide, what is it I'm interested in? What is it I want to consider potentially studying, right? And how can I take that love of music, right? And maybe they love to sing, and going, how can I turn that around and bless my community? Okay, where can you show off your passion projects? Great question. In most of the time, you're going to be writing essay prompts to win merit-based scholarships. So my children applied for a ton of scholarships and lots of little ones, and they add up. So, but most of the time, you are going to be answering a prompt of some sort, and that's where you're going to be talking about that passion project. So not only does it give you something to talk about, right, on merit-based scholarship essays, but it gives you something to talk about on your college entrance essays, because they want you to write about yourself and something that you've done or something that you're passionate about. So it's perfect to write about your passion project. It also gives you something to talk about one-on-one in your interview. So as I mentioned, I did help my own 3 children win full tuition scholarships, but I feel strongly that their high test prep scores just got their foot in the door, right? That just helped them get invited to scholarship weekend, right? Like that just helped them start the process. And it really was their communication skills and their interview skills that helped them win the scholarships. I'd like to study psychology and possibly become a therapist. What kind of passion project would help me with that? Okay, that's a great question. When it comes to psychology, my son's actually a psychology major in college, and he went up to a college professor and asked him about doing some potential research with him. He's like, yes, I got a ton. So I would contact a college professor, and that might be one where it's the research, which, by the way, research is becoming the next passion project thing, right? Research is growing, right? And especially if you're going to be trying to go to a competitive school, you might want to look into that. Hey, research opportunities in high school to get into a competitive school. But I would contact potentially the college you're even considering, you're maybe your top 3, or even a reach school. Say, hey, I'm a high school student. I'm interested in psychology. I can want to consider it as my major. Do you happen to have any research projects going on, or do you know any other professors that have research opportunities that I can consider? All right, in finance, all right, that's great. I think with finance, I think that like the example I had just given about perhaps hosting a young investors camp for middle school students and maybe even 9th grade students, right? And sometimes even hosting it your own age group, right? That's totally fine. But you don't necessarily need to teach it, right? You get a volunteer, you get somebody who teaches finance, or highly involved in banks, right? To come you just coordinate the event, right? And host it, and then somebody else can come in and teach it, and that's part of that process of you getting volunteers to do it. Internships in the and community volunteer services be considered passion projects. Yes, internships and community volunteer services would count as passion projects. Need dates. Yes, resumes do need dates. They want to know how long you've done it. I'm not a fan of necessarily student resumes that talk about being a well-rounded student. That means, oh, a year of chess and a year of robotics and a year of speech and debate, right? I suggest pointy students. And what I mean by that is that a student has shown direction and interest and passion in an area and stayed there. For example, their student resume would show varsity soccer, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, right? It would show speech and debate, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, instead of just a year here and there, a year here and there. Yes, some of those scholarship search engines that I mentioned have a dashboard, like you have an account with them. They help you through the process of picking the right scholarships for you, and you can apply for multiple scholarships all at one time. So those are really good. So I recommend checking those out. If you have leadership in the club and organize activities and events for the club, would it be considered a passion project? All right, that's a great question. I'm going to say if you didn't initiate the club, if you didn't create the club, I wouldn't call that a passion project. I would call that leadership experience, which is valuable and needed when it comes to winning scholarships, but I wouldn't think that that is a passion project. Yes, there's a lot of times you can create a project that's going to help you get a scholarship, because these passion projects really give you something to do and something to write about, and give you a chance to learn about yourself, really, right? You're learning, developing that human capital, what it is you're interested in. But it does help you through the process because of the fact that so many of the merit-based scholarships give you that opportunity to write a short essay, and this is what you would be writing about. So yes, it does help. Okay, what is Scholarship Weekend? Great question. A lot of private schools have honors programs, and also when you are going to be applying for maybe a private school, and there's a lot of state schools that have honors programs too, like UF. I mean, they're hard to get into the honors programs, but I highly recommend going for them and applying for a bunch of them. But an honors program means you have to meet a requirement test score wise. And I do know for Covenant, just as an example, that they required a SAT score of 1320 to be invited to Scholarship Weekend. So if you were invited to Scholarship Weekend, then you could apply for the McClellan Scholarship, which is their top honors program. And they give away 12 full tuition scholarships per year. That's a lot. And a lot of private schools do that, will give away full tuition scholarships. But above and beyond that, not just the winning the full tuition scholarship, you are competing for other top financial aid packages. So it's worth it. It's worth your time to get those scores to be able to potentially apply for the honors programs. See examples. Okay, I'm not sure what examples you're needing. if you mean examples in the student resumes, I had shown some samples of that. You don't have to have a passion project. This is just my suggestion of ways to help you stand out to win scholarships. It's just one of many ways. Having a very professional student resume helps you stand out, right? At the end of the day, you're looking for ways to stand out. So passion projects help with that. That's totally fine if they don't test well, but excels in other things academically, that's totally fine. Yes, it will hurt the chance of winning a merit-based scholarship, because a lot of times merit-based scholarships are based on GPA and test scores. But there's going to be other scholarships as well that are different. So, but I do recommend considering test prep, because I've had many students who come in and they're like, I'm not a good test taker. I had a student that coached with me in the spring who, again, I coach all sections, but on the math tends to be the hardest for students. But he had just taken the real SAT, had a score of a 490 out of 800. And on our first day in class in the practice test that we did, he scored a 490. But he kept his camera like that, right? Like just on the forehead, made it really clear. He didn't want to be in the class, which is totally fine. But as time went on, he got into it. He got into Math Chops, loved it. Put in over 1,500 questions on Math Chops, but he really wanted to be challenged. And what happened was he saw his score go up and down and up and down and up and down in a positive slope, and he got into it. Like he saw his score go into the mid 500s, upper 500s, into the 600s, 690, 700s, right? And then he took the real SAT and he just got a 750 out of 800 on the math. So I was super excited for him. So it is possible, it is doable to have significant score increases. It just takes time. It takes actually flushing through at least 10 practice tests, which is way more than what most students and parents think. What students think, if they're college bound, is all I need is 4 to 6 practice tests and I'm good to go. But that's not true. That's not enough. So if students, and by the way, most students are missing more than half the problems. The national average, and you can Google this too, for the SAT math is about a 525. That tends to be the national average of high school graduating seniors. But the chance of increasing your scores significantly is possible. It is doable. It just takes time. And it usually takes going through all 10 practice tests, the reading and the writing language sections, as well as the math sections. And I point out, what is the skill being tested on this particular question? So at the end of the day, it's very important for students to know this is not a logic-based test. You can't, for the vast majority, right? You can't just look at the problem and know the answer. No, you're going to have to know the math skill, right? You're going to have to know the English grammar skill. You're going to have to back read to the passage to answer the question. But it does come down to the fact that students need way more practice than they think to be able to increase their scores. Experience as well. Okay, for those who kind of missed out on some of those extracurriculars in high school, I gotcha. What did they do with their time when they weren't doing the extracurricular in high school? Did they find other beneficial things to do from home, right? Those were the things I would be writing about if they were able to use their time in a way that's going to be going, yes, I wasn't able to get out of the house, right, for this amount of time, but during that time I wrote a book, or I created a mentor group for other, young middle schoolers going through this situation or something like that. So it's how they used their time then, as well as the fact that there's still time left to do things, right? So if your child is a sophomore, junior, senior, even, they've got time to continue writing their story. What are the scores again? Oh, if you're asking for what was the national average on the math, it's a 525 out of 800. And Usually the language arts section, so the reading and the writing and language sections tend to be higher scores. On the ACT, it is the science section and the math section that tend to pull the composite scores down. If your SAT score is lower than the requirement, is it going to be hard to get in if you have a high GPA? Okay, well, it depends on the college that you're looking for, which, by the way, also, if you are going to be considering an elite school, a competitive school, I recommend hiring an IEC, an independent educational consultant that helps you get into competitive schools. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. You know, it depends on the school you're looking into. I do know for sure that colleges actually look at a holistic view of the student, not just test scores, because they know that some students aren't great test takers. So they're going to, the strong GPA is going to mean a lot, as well as if they have a strong extracurricular involvement, as well as leadership experience. What makes a good recommendation? Well, as far as a letter of recommendation, I think a stellar letter of recommendation is one that just makes your child sound like the best thing since sliced bread, right? Like, it really needs to showcase specifically some of the things that make that student great. So not just fluff, right? It needs to be specifics about that student, what they're involved in, their heart to serve, their desire to make an impact on the world. So I do recommend, that's why I recommend you asking for 5, because trust me, you're going to notice that some of the people that you've asked were just not good writers, right? And you thought that it was going to be this stellar letter, and you're like, dang it, I was counting on that one. So that's why it's good for you to ask for more, and then you'll find too that work for you. So I'm a senior high school. Yes, you can write that you're an NSHSS member. I would also recommend becoming an NSHSS ambassador. So one of my daughters was an ambassador for NSHSS, and that just gave her opportunities to be, they went to meetings and she promoted NSHSS, and she went to their Scholars Day event in Atlanta. It's actually a really big deal in her life. Oh, that's fine if you're a junior, haven't taken the SAT. I've actually had people call me spring semester of senior year, and the parent was, well, we thought they were going to get a sports scholarship, but we need those grades, test scores now. So it's totally fine if you haven't already started the test prep journey. Just start now, start soon. So, and if you're interested in test prep, you're welcome to reach out and send me an email. It's info@hortontestprep.com. No, as far as the winning scholarships, I was from Florida when my kids were in high school, but no, this is for nationwide. Are scholarships taxable? That is a great question. I don't think I know the answer. I do know that the vast majority, 99% of the scholarships, the money is actually sent directly to your college of choice. And I know that's how NSHSS did it as well. Both of my daughters were Disney scholars as well. And so all of those types of scholarships, as well as distinguished young women, that money just goes directly to the school. Can you apply the President Coolidge Scholarship your senior year? No, you can't. The President Coolidge is only for juniors. Yeah, sorry. You recommend for finding interest with it. Yes, the websites I'd mentioned before, those were scholarship search engines. Repost that. Yes, I will get that to Leslie. And I can get the screen. What would Khan Academy PSAT based practice be considered copycat curriculum? The thing about Khan Academy, first, I respect it. Free education for the world, right? I'm an educator, so I really, really respect Khan Academy. My problem with it is, as an educator, I believe students need access to questions of clarification. They need a real person, that they can ask. And so because there's not a chat box, there's no phone support, there's no email support for Khan Academy. And a lot of students that I know in the past have tried to use Khan Academy for their test prep journey. And there was a disconnect between the video clip and the math problem. And they were like, yeah, I got the video clip, but that's not what this problem is. It ended up causing frustration, which I don't like. So I do think if you're just going to do online only, I'd recommend MathTops, right? Because they're so good and it's designed for test prep. And it's actually like a game. There's your test score at the very beginning. And as you conquer the math skills, your test scores go up, up, and up. I do want to mention that you have to make sure the student knows those skills, right? And then be applying them with real College Board materials or ACT materials and past real exams, either test. So are there scholarships that aren't essay? Yeah, there's absolutely a ton of scholarships where you're just putting your name in a hat. The problem is that a ton of people apply for those, so it's hard to win them. It's easier to win scholarships where you're writing an essay because less students apply for them. So I gave you my top 2 scholarships. Those were my favorite. A lot of the other ones that we applied for were just ones that were on the search engines. No, I wouldn't start prepping for SAT or ACT freshman year. I think it's too early. I did have a parent talk me into it one time, but she assured me, she's like, it's not me. They want it. They are ready, right? So if the student is chomping at the bit to start the test prep journey, but that's not usually the case, I actually just recommend just wait, start spring semester of 10th grade and hit it hard so that they're then primed and ready for that October exam, and then take both the PSAT that October as well as the SAT that October, and just tell them in advance, yes, you're going to be a little brain dead in the month of October, but that's a good thing because that way you're hitting it out when they're prepped and ready, and they'll do well. Is the TIR the same? Yes, the TIR is the past real exam for the ACT. Yes, great questions. Which one would it be better to start prepping? Yeah, I don't recommend prepping freshman year in general because you just don't want the student to burn out. Does the PSAT matter? Well, it matters if they become National Merit Scholar, right? The PSAT, people think that it's easier, right? It's not any easier, it's just shorter. So it's just as hard as the SAT. It's testing the same skills. So it's just as hard on the reading and the writing and language. The writing and language is testing your English grammar skills as well as concise writing skills. But as far as in general, if you're not gonna end up making national merit, either of those 3 levels, finalist, semifinalist, or commended, then it's really going to be just for practice then for the SAT, to understand the testing environment, to understand the test sections. Yeah, I think I've got all of these. Are there any other questions? I think I've addressed most of those. So Leslie, do you see any others?
I see a couple, Leah. Let me send them over to you in the chat to see if you can answer them, or I can actually ask them to you. So somebody was asking is what categories do you consider essential for a student resume?
I think it depends on the student. Really what they've been involved in, their past real work experience, their awards, their academic honors. You know, those are just some of the classics, but every student's going to be different based on what they were involved in. So if a student, you know, initiated creating a club, like it was their idea to start a robotics club, right? That's something that I would recommend writing in the resume. Not just that you were a part of one, that that had the idea, initiated the club, got the members, got the funding, right? Because there's just a lot of leadership that goes on in initiating things, right? And that's why I'm such a fan of the passion projects, because there's a lot of initiation that takes place in that process. But that's a great question.
Somebody asked, what is considered a high GPA?
Oh, wow. That's so hard to answer because every school is different as far as Depending on how many advanced AP dual enrollment classes. I mean, I've seen these GPA scores that are 5.2 or whatever but some schools don't offer as many. So that's why it's good to have both your weighted and your unweighted scores on your student resume if possible. And let the college decide themselves, and you can, because that's a hard question to answer, and it's going to be hard for the colleges and scholarship committees to be able to evaluate as well.
Another question, it says, is TIR the same as QAS?
Yes, but it just means passed real exam, and the TIR is for the ACT exam. So yes, I coach through passed real ACT exams as well as I coach through passed real SAT exams.
Somebody else asked, what are the 2 top scholarships?
Well, in my opinion, it's the President Coolidge, right? Which is for the juniors, because that's the best I've ever seen. And I just love that scholarship so much, not just because of what they offer, but I love the fact that at that time in a high school student's journey, right, it helps them get organized. It helps them get that student resume written. It helps them get those letters of recommendation. It helps them be prepared for the process. And then they're ready to start applying for a ton. It's what we did. We started applying for a ton of scholarships on NSHSS as well as other merit-based scholarships. And it worked for us because we applied for a lot and we were ready. So we used those same essays over and over and over and over again, because you can adapt them a little bit to answer the question that the next scholarship asked.
Perfect. One more last question. It says, how many times can you take the PSAT?
Well, depending on your school, a lot of times you can take it in 9th grade, right, and 10th grade as practice. And then you just need to know that it really only counts towards the National Merit Scholarship their junior year. And it's a little complicated, but I'll try to bottom line it. Every state has different requirements for becoming a National Merit finalist. And the College Board designed that on purpose so that every state in America would be represented and would have scholars that meet that level. But it means that the score to receive and become a National Merit finalist is going to be higher in a state like Massachusetts, right? Because Massachusetts has great public schools, and it is definitely harder to become a National Merit finalist in Massachusetts than Utah, right? Because the score requirement to become a National Merit finalist is lower there. So you might want to just do some research on that, as in, hey, what does my score need to be? They don't even announce it until after, right, the year you take it. So you'll just know what your state's is, and then it changes a little bit up or down each year.
Thanks, Leah. That's all the time we've got for questions. So I'll recommend everybody to hit you up directly if they have any more questions. But thank y'all, everybody, so much for joining us tonight. Thank you, Leah, for your presentation. And then if you guys have any questions, just make sure to hit her up once you get done with, I think you shared your information, right, Leah?
Yes, info@hortontestprep.com.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Y'all have a great night. Thank y'all for joining us.
Thank you.